So we have a full show, and I'll start off first by welcoming Bill Boyd and John Blink. Welcome to Lunchtime with Ira.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks. I wanted to have you both on because, John, you are co-author of a book, and I'm going to show it right here, called California Hotel and Casino. It's a long title, Hawaii's Home Away from Home.
Yes.
And you are the co-author, and you also wrote it with a gentleman who is a professor in Hawaii.
Yes, Dr. Dennis Ogawa.
And what was the impetus behind writing the book?
Essentially, it was a very unique point in history, I think for Las Vegas in particular, where Bill and his father built a hotel casino downtown.
And Sam Boyd.
Absolutely, Sam Boyd. And it struggled in the beginning. We had a hard time finding what our market niche was. Sam directed us to that, and for the next 18 to 20 years, Bill, myself, and many other people worked toward the great success that property has become, the financial foundation for Boyd Gaming, in essence.
Now, Bill, one of the successes of the property, and that led to the expansion of Boyd Gaming, is the connection with the Hawaiian market. So how did that start with your father, Sam?
Well, we had lived in Hawaii in the mid-1930s, came back to the mainland in 1940. And after the first year of really struggling at the California Hotel, my dad one day said, you know, what we need is a niche market, and that's going to be Hawaii. We're going to make this the Hawaiian people's home away from home, and that's what we set out to do.
That was a pretty good foresight when you think about how far Hawaii is from, let alone Las Vegas, just the United States. But in addition, now today in 2008, there's a significant Hawaiian population in Las Vegas, let alone the number of visitations from the island as well. So it's to have that foresight and figure out that would be a great market.
There wasn't hardly any Hawaiians that lived in Las Vegas in those days. They were still on the island of not only Oahu, where Honolulu is, but the other outer islands as well. But my dad knew that the Hawaiians loved to gamble. And he had said when we lived there was a game in every block, and this is going to be their home when they come to Las Vegas.
Now, John mentioned that it was a struggle in the beginning. Do you see it the same way?
Yes, definitely. It was double tough, and it was my father's foresight was wonderful in thinking about those days that we had lived in Hawaii. And we set out, the first thing he said is, well, we're going to send our chef to Hawaii to learn how to cook all the foods the way the Hawaiians like them, which we did. And then we set up what we called the Hawaiian package, where they could buy not only their round-trip air ticket, but their 4 or 5 days at the California Hotel, plus 3 meals a day. And, of course, any money they had left in their pocket, they could play with.
Now, John, you said the era that's covered is 1975 to 1990.
Correct.
And when this finally took hold and the market developed, this market segment developed, when you both were making history with this, you weren't thinking at the time that this was history, correct?
No, I wasn't. Were you, Bill?
Not at all.
We were too busy.
Too busy doing it.
Yeah.
So how did the book come about in conjunction with your co-writer? How did you make that decision to put this book together? Because you certainly had photos in the book showing the earlier days, and it is a history, but what was the real impetus behind the book?
Quite frankly, Ira, I did not even know the significance of it till many years later. And it was my good friend, Dr. Dennis Ogawa of the University of Hawaii, that said to me, John, he has done books on his own as well. He said, you know, we really should sit down and do this. Well, it took several years for that to be drummed into my head, Ira, before finally I sat down.
You have always been stubborn, haven't you, John?
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, Bill knows. He finally convinced me, and over the course of the last 3 years, diligently set thoughts to computer, not to pen, but to computer, and brought in the people that were involved in the time. The book is a collection of oral histories from Boyd Gaming employees that were there at the very beginning, and most importantly, the people in Hawaii that were there at that time, that were the focal point of making this happen, because it took a collection of a lot of people for this to happen.
Now, when you started the process, did you share equally the division of labor as far as the oral history interviews, or how did that work? What was the process?
Well, Dr. Ogawa came to Las Vegas, and we did the interviews together with the people at the California Hotel primarily. In Hawaii, Dr. Ogawa and people in Hawaii did that themselves with the people that I pointed them to.
That was a long sentence. I'm not sure I followed that
sorry.
exactly, but I think I got it. Bill, have a long working relationship with John Blink. Were you surprised after all this time he was going to approach you and say, you know what, we decided to do a book on the history of the California Hotel and how it started the Hawaiian market?
Yes, I really was. Of course, John had been with us for many, many years, was at the California Hotel from the start. In fact, John worked at the Union Plaza when my dad and I were both stockholders, and my dad actually ran the Union Plaza. And even before that, John worked at the El Dorado as a busboy when he was in high school. So we go back a long ways.
Indeed. Are you amazed when you look back to, John referenced the beginning at the California Hotel, and now you have Boyd Gaming Corporation, which obviously encompasses not only additional casinos in the Las Vegas market, but throughout the country. Are you amazed at the growth over a relatively short period of time?
Really am amazed. I know I've had a lot of folks ask me, did you ever think you'd get this big? And thinking back to those days at the California, all we wanted to do was make payroll in 2 weeks. That's all we thought about. So,
Right.
But we've had a great opportunity to grow, and that's because we've had wonderful people in the company. I've had great support for all the years in the company.
I would think, because I referenced a number of Hawaiians that actually live in Las Vegas, so I would imagine you're going to have book sales both obviously in Hawaii, but also in Las Vegas, just with the resident population of Hawaiians.
Oh, most assuredly.
There's also many Hawaiians that live in the state of California now
That's
as well.
right.
Right, so I have a feeling John's going to go down and do some book signings in California.
Well, actually, Hawaii. We've got a very big. Bill and myself both have a very busy week this coming week, doing all kinds of things in Hawaii. We've got television tapings, newspaper interviews, book signings. Amazon.com will be coming out with the book.
Yeah, your book will be available on Amazon.com. Here's my question: was it a challenge to make it a both academic exercise, since your co-author is a professor, but also popular history of that time? In other words, do you see the book being in the university library as well, or a cultural center as well, in addition to just people buying it because it's a fascinating read?
Ira, that's an excellent question, and I wrestled with that question for quite a long period of time. The part of me wanted to make it an academic book, but the people in Hawaii kept saying, no, it has to be a personable book. Write it from the time, what you experienced, the feelings you went through when you were there, and I think they were right. However, from the standpoint of academia, I think it's a great marketing 101, in particular for the casino business, which is applicable today. Relationship marketing.
Right. Let's go back in time for a second. I'm going to test your brain here, John, or your memory. So when it first started out and you were working, and you and Bill and all the others were working on expanding this market, what was the biggest challenge in terms of developing Hawaii as a market? Which, by the way, turned out to be a market really for all of Las Vegas as well.
Absolutely.
But initially with just the California Hotel.
Biggest singular factor, Ira, comes down to airlines. There was business coming out of Hawaii to gaming destination, but it wasn't Las Vegas. It was Reno at that period in time. United Airlines had the market on it. They could funnel the people from Hawaii to San Francisco, give them a free flight from San Francisco to Reno. Right. So Reno had all the market base at that time. We had to work very hard with the airlines and prove a lot of things to the airlines, so that Western Airlines at that time would say, boy, you know, we are selling a lot of your packages, which they had never done for a hotel before.
See, I would have used the train as a Hawaii to Las Vegas, but maybe not.
And of course, that's why for the last 8 years, we've had 6 charters a week that fly from Honolulu to Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And they all stay at our 3 downtown hotels, in addition to the California, the Fremont, and Main Street Station.
Right. So 6 charters a week, and how do you determine, and this might be a Bill question, how do you determine the days, or maybe how does a charter determine the days that they fly out here? In other words, it's, because 6 of them, that's almost the whole week, so you almost have to not, actually it's easy just to say, okay, one day we're not, so it's just one day.
Yeah. Well, they want to leave at the convenient times,
right,
and leave Las Vegas at the most convenient times for the customers. That's number one.
So when they come in from a charter flight, do they land at McCarran?
Yes, they do. They have their own area at McCarran that they land, and then we have buses, of course, meet them and bring them to the California, and then they get sent to their room. And this is all in the package. Everything is.
They're
in
not
the
being
package.
punished by being sent to their room,
No,
are they? Okay,
not
they
at
just
all.
go to their room.
Most
So
of
they
them
can
don't
come
go to
back
their
and play.
room.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the luggage goes to the room.
Yeah, the
they
luggage
hit the
goes there, they
casino.
right. Have we ever looked at or done an analysis of all the islands in Hawaii? Which is the biggest draw for you? In other words, is it one particular island that you seem to get the most visitors from?
Oh, that's Oahu without a doubt. I mean, just sheer
is.
numbers. I mean,
Is it
90%
because
of the population of the state is
Right.
focused on one island.
And Maui would be second.
Right.
Although we do get from the big island of Hawaii, we do get a number of customers from the Hilo area in particular.
So you mentioned earlier on, Bill, that you sent the chef to learn how to cook, which makes perfect sense. Now, I don't know how to cook Spam, but I just can take it out of the can. And I know that's very popular with Hawaiians. Is it still a popular?
Still
Yes, it
very,
is.
very
Absolutely.
popular.
It is. It's amazing.
And we still have all of those items that the Hawaiians love on our menu at the California Hotel. And in addition to that, on our second floor, we have a restaurant that we lease to a native Hawaiian that cooks just Hawaiian foods.
Oh, okay, that will work out. Now, how many people have seen the book since this is really just debuting? So how many people have had a chance to go through it, John, and react to it and let you know that they liked it, they enjoyed the narratives and the photos that are in there?
On this side of the pond?
Right, on this side of the pond, and then I'm going to ask you about the other side.
On this side of the pond, very few. Because primarily all of the promotion is starting in Hawaii rather than Las Vegas, because that's where the demand is for the book.
It's also where the history, in a sense,
Absolutely.
these people coming, the visitors coming from to here. So yeah, that would make some sense. But you must have, at this point, I would imagine, second or even possibly third generation families that have first introduced by your father Sam to Las Vegas, and then continue the tradition.
Yeah, third generation, definitely. We see all of the time grandchildren, and some now great-grandchildren as well, of some of those original visitors.
That's pretty impressive. So do you see this becoming, in addition to a book, any sort of multimedia presentation, or you go out in the lecture circuit?
Well, something else has come from the writing of the book, Ira, that I'm real proud of, and that has to do with the Japanese Cultural Center in Hawaii. They are one of the backers of the book, along with the University of Hawaii Press. But the Cultural Center has gone so far as to do a California hotel exhibit, with Bill and his family donated a lot of artifacts from Sam's personally that are in the exhibit. We have a lot of photos of that era, Mini 21 table, a lot of the things that we created during that time period for the people in Hawaii. Well, I hoard things, so I had a lot to contribute to that as well. And this exhibit is part of the Japanese culture, and it will be not only at the Cultural Center in Hawaii, it'll go throughout the west coast of the United States, and hopefully somewhere down the line it even winds up at one of Mr. Boyd's properties.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bill Boyd, ladies and gentlemen, Executive Chairman of Boyd Gaming Corporation, and John Blink, who is a co-author of the new book, California Hotel and Casino, Hawaii's Home Away from Home, available on Amazon.com. This is Lunchtime with Ira, and we'll be right back.